The challenge we have today is that in so many of the communities that we come from, talent, I believe, in this country is equally distributed. The problem we face is that opportunity is not. And the key to opportunity in many of these communities is capital. You need money to be able to take that good idea to turn it into a business. You need money to be able to afford that first home that allows you to build equity, to be able to afford to send your kids to school. But both because of the historical prejudices that existed in our society, but also because of the ways that we have defined communities, it is hard for that capital to reach Black and brown communities throughout this country. Bishop, you've done a lot to try and change that yourself, but I think we've also done that through this ecosystem of CDFIs. And the key now is, how do we grow that ecosystem? How do we grow opportunity? How do we get scale in a way that allows us to have transformative opportunities in our community is the key.
Very, very important. Our families depend on it. Home ownership depends on it. The growth of our small business depends on it. More Americans are hired by small businesses than major corporations, though the major corporations seem to have all the weight when it comes to getting things done. Chapter 4, System is Broken. Recently, you mentioned being from California and Kamala Harris being from California. Recently, she was interviewed and asked, was she going to run for governor? And her response was no, she wasn't going to run for governor because the system is broken. Do you agree that the system is broken, and what would it take to fix it?
I think it's impossible to look at the system and think that it's not broken. And I think a big part of what has broken it is money, frankly. And you mentioned big companies, for some reason, having more say than small businesses, which employ millions of Americans. The big reason that many of these businesses have more say is because they are using money to gain influence. And one of the things that is saddest about our system is that we don't have campaign finance reform, which means that money would be moved out of politics and would allow us to be in a place where good people have the ability to run for office without having to raise millions of dollars to do so. You think about California. In order to run for governor in California, it's going to cost you about $30 million, at least. Expensive media markets, you've got to raise the money to do that. That means that you are leaving out a number of people who may be great governors who don't have the ability to raise the money. I think fixing that piece of the system in and of itself is probably the most important reform to trying to change the nature of politics and giving us a fair shot. There's a lot of other things that I could mention, but I do think the corrosive nature of the way that we're allowing money to influence our politics makes it very hard to get the type of policy that we need as Americans.
Would you say that, or is it something else that is the biggest hurdle you've had to face for politics?
So I'd say that money is probably the universal thing that gets in the way. I do think that fundamentally one of the things that we are still grappling with in a country is a system that was set up to do less. Because when we created our system of government, people created it in a way to be a conservative one that meant the people who had value were able to keep that value and making it harder for new people to be brought into the system. So you have things like the Electoral College, which made no sense then, makes even less sense now, but was created in order to make sure that certain states continued to have the same kind of power in the system. So I think that there are systemic issues, but fundamentally the way that money further enables those systemic issues to play out, I think is probably the most corrosive thing from my point of view.
In my own state, Texas, there's a big
you've got
fight.
some problems right now.
Yeah, we have a fight going on right now about redlining. What are your thoughts about it?
Redistricting. So to me, this is one of those political fights that speak to the nature of, ultimately, we have a system that was built around one person, one vote. We redistrict every 10 years. The idea of doing this, I think, further erodes the trust that people have in the system when they see that politicians, instead of being focused on the thing that matters most, and right now the thing that matters most is lowering cost because things cost too much, from housing to food to electricity. Instead of doing that, what they're focused on right now is trying to find ways to preserve power. And that speaks to what makes people so frustrated about government and politics. And my hope is that what's going to happen is that the governor will realize that in Texas, what people want to see happen is bring down the electrical bills in Texas, help people get access to housing in Texas. If you do the right thing, the American people will reward you by voting for you. But being distracted by trying to redistrict in order to create an unfair advantage for your side, I just don't think the American people like the idea of changing the rules mid-game on a system that they're already worried about. So I think that you're right that one of the challenges, I think, in any system is that people who have power want to hold on to it. And when they want to do that at the cost of focusing on the things that their people who voted for them care about, I think that is a recipe for losing power that democracies, when allowed to function, have done. So I think the key is making sure that it's allowed to function.
Do you think that the erosion of trust in the system by the American people has something to do with the slowing of the economy and the impact that it's having on the GDP?
No question. And I don't think it's just here in America. You know, I was just in Europe, and you go throughout Western Europe, and working class people around the world feel as if the economy doesn't work for them.
They're not seen.
They don't feel, and I think my view is that this started during that financial crisis that I mentioned, where for many Americans, we told them, go buy a house. That'll be your greatest investment. Over time, that investment will grow. It'll make you wealthy. You'll be able to put your kids to school. You can hold your job, and your income's going to grow over time. Everything will be fine. All of a sudden, you have a crisis that means if you own a home, the value might be less, especially if you don't live on the coast. That job you had that was a union job that paid well probably disappeared, and the job you got now, while it pays you a decent income, you have no clue what your career trajectory is. You could be fired tomorrow. So,
Right.
And costs keep going up. We focused on inflation when, frankly, we should have spent a lot more time focused on the cost of living. They're often related, but they could also be different. And the truth was, since the second term of the Obama administration, the cost of housing, the cost of healthcare, the cost of education, be it childcare if your kid is young or higher education, growing far faster than anyone's wages, especially for the working class. So, of course, these people who don't feel like the governments that they've elected are paying enough attention to these issues are likely to vote for whoever they think may solve it. And if you look at every election since 2016, the American people have voted to remove the party in power in some way. In 2018, they elect a new Congress. In 2020, they elect a new president. In 2022, a new Congress. In 2024, a new president. All, I think, driven by the point you made.